back to Room 237. I'm back with another review. And this is another random movie when I was looking over my collection for ones that I haven't reviewed yet. And this is one that I haven't seen for quite a long time. I've had it for probably around a decade. It's another Blue Underground film. Uh, I bought this, and this was another blind buy back when I was buying anything 70s, 80s, and Blue Underground. And it kind of ties in with my last video, which was Bob Clark's Death Dream, which I said was a very unique way to take on the zombie genre. Even though I wouldn't really call it a zombie film, I didn't add it to my zombie playlist. This is similar. One call it a zombie film. Some videos and some people have called it a zombie film. It does deal with the undead, but it's not really a zombie movie. I've also seen this called a slasher, which it definitely is not. It has a vicious and violent body count, but even The Fog has a body count, which this does remind me of. And it's a video nasty, which I've been doing more of here and there more recently. And this is from 1981, and it is Dead and Buried. Now, I know this did recently just get a 4K Blu-ray release with I think 3 discs. This one has 2. Yeah, this is the older 2-disc set. I think this was limited to 30,000 copies. I'm guessing because this is number 28,441. But yeah, this was a film I had never seen when I first bought it. I had just heard the title. I knew it was on the Video Nasty list. Again, it was part of Section 2, which were films that's a list of 33 of the original 72 films that were not prosecuted, but still considered a Video Nasty. And I'm perfectly fine with this. This is still a great looking release. I don't really feel the need to upgrade to Blu-ray just because one came out as this great fold out. Does come with an insert of the, I believe, Japanese cover. And this is a very different kind of Video Nasty because this is not it's not a cannibal film, it's not a slasher, it's not an exploitation film. Instead, it's a very atmospheric, foggy, gloomy, black magic, witchcraft type film. And yeah, even though it does have the undead, it's not your typical zombie Video Nasty either. It does have some vicious kills. The most iconic one being the needle in the eye with the guy in the body cast. I've been seeing people call this the most underrated film of the 80s. It does have a big cult following, and it just got a 4K Blu-ray, so I don't think it's too underrated. But then again, I think underrated is becoming one of those hyperbolic terms that people just throw around very loosely. Like, almost as if to say they just don't like it as much as they do. Some people might even call, like, The Exorcist underrated just because they haven't watched it as many times as them. Small tangent. Now, this also has some great talent behind it. It was directed by Gary Sherman, who directed movies like Raw Meat and Poltergeist 3. Not saying Poltergeist 3 is a good movie, it's not, but this is very competently shot and made. Written by Ronald Shusett and Dan O'Bannon. Of course, Dan O'Bannon wrote the original Alien, wrote and directed Return of the Living Dead, which is a zombie film. That's one of my favorite films. Did some special effects work on things like Star Wars and Dark Star. Story by Alex Stern and Jeff Miller. Stephen Poster did the cinematography. Joe Renzetti did the music, which I just want to see what else he did. Of course, he did the Buddy Holly story. Okay, he did The Exterminator, Dead and Buried, uh, Poltergeist 3, Child's Play. Alright. Frankenhooker, Basket Case 2 and 3. Episode of Tales from the Crypt. So that's pretty cool. The main theme with the piano that's put over the end credits and the main menu actually sounds a lot like the Schindler's List theme, and it just this very somber kind of piano, and it's very mood setting. This is a very moody, atmospheric film. Uh, Again, very different for Video Nasty, very different for 1981. I mean, 81 was like the major boom year for slashers. And here you have, I guess you could say a slow burn. I mean, it clocks in at 94 minutes, but it kind of has the pacing and the feel of these more slower, more culty, not necessarily always a cult, but more atmospheric ones that clock in around hour 40, 50 minutes, but it's only 94. Sadly, this only made just over 200,000 at the box office, which it deserved a lot more. Uh, I'm guessing in the heyday of slashers, that could be why. Now, as far as the cast goes, because the cast is very competent as well, uh, for the lead, you have James Ferrantino as Sheriff Dan Gillis, who I'm sure most people know about from the TV show Dynasty. What else was he in? Oh, that's not The Possessed I was thinking of. Uh, Nothing else I've seen. But as far as familiar people, you got Jack Albertson, Uncle Joe from Willy Wonka. Which, if you thought he was old in Willy Wonka, this was 10 years later. I think he passed away shortly after this. I know he did a voice in Fox and the Hound shortly after. November of 81. So he did die that year. He was also in the Poseidon Adventure. And I think he was in something else that I reviewed. Um, Maybe not. I could have swore he was in something else I reviewed, but I guess not. But yeah, you have Jack Albertson, and you have a small role by a Freddy Krueger Robert Englund. So it's fitting that I'm wearing this. Yeah, this was 3 years before he ever played Freddy. So, and I always thought it was cool to see him sort of pre-Freddy before he became this huge horror icon. Of course, before this, he was in Tobe Hooper's Eaten Alive. And I've always considered Robert Englund to be like the next generation of Vincent Price. You know, super identifiable look, name, tons and tons of credits, so associated with horror, just a huge icon. I would absolutely love to meet Robert Englund. You also have Stan Winston on the effects, and it's not really an effects film. You know, it's not like a Friday the 13th or like a Tom Savini zombie movie. In fact, the zombies mostly look like people. They look and behave like people up until the end, or some small bits where you see them with like cracked skin or scars or whatever. But you know, a lot of the effects work. They they do look believable. Some of them are very dated, like the guy that gets all the acid up his nose. But again, you can definitely tell there's effort behind it. Like, it's not just a fake head getting burnt. You know, they have a contraption to make the jaw move, and you see the skin start to bubble out. So it's still a big effect. And again, all practical. I'll even take, I've always said, I'll take a practical effect that you can tell is fake over CGI any day. I can't remember if I mentioned already, but how it kind of reminded me of The Fog, because it takes place in the fictional town of Potter's Glen. I believe it was filmed in California, but it has this very New England seaside small town look and feel to it. You have constant fog. Uh, the whole movie kind of reminds me, like, if you take The Fog, In the Mouth of Madness, with like, a slight zombie touch to it. Except the zombie aspect is more akin to White Zombie with Bela Lugosi, because you do kind of have an overseer who uses voodoo to resurrect these corpses. And it is this small town where it's all the townspeople are in on something. But it has the look and atmosphere of The Fog. Maybe not as rich as The Fog, but still pretty damn solid. And it's all centered around this one sheriff who people start popping up dead in what seems to be very horrific accidents, but then just appears to be straight up murder. And he's trying to solve it, and he goes down this rabbit hole that reveals witchcraft and voodoo and more, more people he knows and people very close to him could be involved. It also has a very Twilight Zone type feel to it, especially the very ending, the very last shot, which I won't say just yet, did have a very Twilight Zone feel to it. Now, it is kind of obvious who's in on it. I mean, it pretty much shows you who's in on it. I think there's supposed to be a twist with a couple of the characters, but it is kind of obvious that they are in on it. But the one twist I didn't see coming is the one that kind of deals with the final shot. But I'm not quite sure where to begin. I mean, it opens up pretty horrifically with this photographer. He's just taking photos. This beautiful blonde lady comes up. She's like, "You look like a Freddy." He says, "You look like a Lisa." She wants to model for him, so they do a photo shoot. And then she tries to seduce him, and then more townspeople pop up. They gang up on him. They beat him up. They actually throw a fishing net around him, around a pole, and it's a pretty suspenseful scene because it happens very slow. The way they tie him up, the way they walk up slowly with the gas can, then slowly do it with the match. He goes up in flames. They pose him in an upside down van to make it look like an accident. There's a fisherman that they kill with like a pickaxe and other instruments. They put him in a wrecked car. Oh, and also the group of townspeople are all taking photos. So there's a bunch of flashes going on at the same time. Also, another thing that really helps the atmosphere along with the fog is this I don't know, purposely or purposefully, on purpose, it has this very muted look to it, this very gray, dull, with what it is like this constant overcast, just this gray look. But even the colors within the film, it's all very muted and very drab and dull. That was done on purpose because they really wanted the blood to pop out when you finally saw the red. Now, it might not pop out as much as, say, like Dawn of the Dead, which is a very colorful film anyway, but that's blood that really pops out. So, it might not have worked to the extent they wanted it to, but that muted color look does help the atmosphere all the same. Also, I guess Gary Sherman wanted this to be more of a comedy, but the producers were like, no, we're putting this out as a horror film. I'm not sure to what extent he wanted the comedy to be. There is some comedic bits throughout, like some of Jack Alberson's lines or the way he delivers them are kind of funny. Which Jack Alberson's great. His performance is very solid in this. As is James Ferrantino as the lead. He was actually a very good horror protagonist. I would say he's underrated. He's like a horror protagonist that no one ever talks about. But I thought he did a very good job. Also, at a time where it's mostly the final girl, the survivor girl, to have a male sheriff kind of put all this together and be the one, it was very different for the time. Also, I guess Dan O'Bannon really wanted his name off the film. He's since disowned it. Because I guess there were some changes he wanted made that he was assured were going to be made. But in the final cut, they didn't do any of his changes. And it was too late to take his name off the credits. So his name is always associated with it, but he since disowned it. And basically, as the film goes on, he's trying to look into, who this photographer is, because they pretty much stripped his identity, his ID, everything. He does know that St. Louis has had a missing person, which is where he's from. But at the same time, this other towns guy is coming up to him saying, these dead people are up and walking around, which is what's happening. These people are being killed in horrific ways and then somehow are being brought back as townspeople, and that they are then in on it. Like the St. Louis photographer, when he comes back, he works at the local gas station, and his name is Freddie. You do get this great scene with a family, a mom and dad and a young son. They're looking for an inn, but they end up at like a rundown, abandoned, cobweb-filled house, which why they go in there, I have no idea. But then all the townspeople kind of show up, and it does have like a Night of the Living Dead type feel to it in this scene, because everyone's just kind of calmly just like walking towards them. They do go to escape, but then the sheriff gets a call from Robert Englund, the tow truck guy, saying he just pulled a car out of the ocean, essentially. No bodies, just a kid's toy airplane, but he has like a sinister look on him. Because he's in on it, because of course he is. A very minor role, but it's Robert Englund, so he does make the most of it. Jack Albertson plays the mortician, who's very proud of his work. He's very skilled at, no matter how mangled the body is, he's able to use his magic, his skills to make them look alive and beautiful again. There is this great speech that he does. I really liked the speech because I think Dan calls him sick or something. And, sometimes you're really sick. And he's like, he says, I've replaced eyes with sawdust and glue the eyelids shut. I've replaced hands with newspaper and closed them when there were no fingers. And I've used the back of the skull when there was no front. It's like, I can do all these things, and yet sometimes you want me to do a closed casket, covering my art. That's what's sick. There's more to it, but that speech he gives, I thought was excellent, and the way Jack Albertson delivered it was just great. Uh, I'm gonna have to get into spoilers. This is kind of a fun mystery, so I am gonna say spoilers. It is kind of an underrated film. It is a cult film. I'll say it's not one that a lot of people have seen. I definitely do recommend it. If you like movies like The Fog, definitely check it out. Very moody, very atmospheric. Uh, it is a video nasty, but don't go into it thinking you're gonna get like Cannibal Holocaust or, you know, there's like a slasher that was on there. Uh, or like I Spit on Your Grave or something. It's not a slasher, but oh, what the hell was this? Or even not video nasties. Like, don't think you're gonna get like Pieces or Friday the 13th or something. It's definitely one of the more, I don't want to say sophisticated, but because there are some things that don't make sense about it, but just well shot, well made, great cast, uh, more slower pace, atmospheric ones of the early 80s. So, uh, I definitely do recommend it, but I'm going to get into spoilers. There are some obvious clues along the way. I mean, Jack Albertson works with the bodies, and eventually he even acts like the bodies are being stolen from him. His wife is a school teacher, but he finds a book about voodoo in the bedroom, but she says it's for the kids. She's teaching them voodoo just as like a fun topic. He doesn't question why it was in like the underwear drawer. But also she has him take this special roll of film to the a local developer, saying it was like a short film that her and her students made, her very young students. And right there, that was when I was like, okay, she's in on it because they're all taking photos. Um, Even towards the end, when he does retrieve the film and he goes home and he gets the projector, he sees all the, I'm not sure what you would call them, the light pieces of older cameras. Um, my Probably my favorite sequence, or the way I really love how it's shot, is when he watches the film that he retrieved for his wife, saying it was a thing that the students made. It's just this black and white, very shaky handheld uh, film going up to this dilapidated house, pretty much showing an earlier kill that we didn't get to see of this couple having sex, and then all the townspeople come in. But like it starts with the blonde for the opening where she just kind of like steps out from behind something. It's very creepy looking. There's no audio uh, for that film. I just love the way it was shot. His he's friends with the local doctor, which the scene with the body cast, the guy for the opening lives. He was in a coma, then he wakes up, and then you kind of get like a Kill Bill type scene where the blonde for the opening goes in there where no one else is in there, stabs him in the eye with the needle, and he dies. That's a pretty well done suspenseful scene as well, because it just holds on his face like he's covered up at one eye's like wide, and he's like trying to scream but he can't. He's like trembling, and you know something's gonna happen as she's talking to him. You see her take out the needle and his eye just gets wider. Very well done scene. Later on, that same doctor gets killed because all the townspeople come in. They shove these tubes, some sort of corrosive agent up his nose, and that's the effect where you can tell it's like an animatronic or a puppet because the jaws like moving, but the way the skin bubbles and everything looks really cool. Also, the effects on the guy from the opening, when we first see him in the car upside down and he springs to life screaming, the burnt effects I thought looked really good. eventually he starts looking into Jack Albertson, finds out he was essentially, was it, fired from his previous position in Rhode Island as a mortician for uh, he was the chief pathologist in Providence. He was dismissed because he had doing unauthorized experiments. Uh, he drifts further away from his wife as more things just point towards her. But then he goes to confront Jack Albertson, whose name is Dobbs. And Jack Albertson's such a great villain at the end of this. He's just like standing there with his hands on a table. He's got all these screens going with the reel of film that he retrieved. Which he did see when he watched it first, that the woman in bed with the male victim was his wife. But he talks about how, you know, all the people in town he pretty much brought back. And Janet was his first. Janet is Dan's wife. He's an artist. He talks about how they have to look alive. So they have to have these really vicious deaths so that he can really use his skills to make them look alive again. And then he uses his skills of black magic to reanimate them. And to him, it's art. He considers himself an artist. And they're all under his control, which again is kind of what makes me think of Bela Lugosi and White Zombie, more so than like a Romero zombie film. And he has them kill so he can, work on more corpses and reanimate more. And Dan is so distraught that he wants to kill Albertson, but he's so welcoming to the idea because he'll end up like his children. Janet shows up and he tries shooting her, but it shows that she can't feel anything. At first she doesn't even notice. Albertson says that she has no memory of helping with these kills because he supplies with the memories. Like he can somehow choose what they do and don't remember. But after she gets shot a bunch of times, she says that she's dead. She wishes to be buried. She runs away. She does end up in a hole, covers herself up, which he chases after her and helps cover her up. But before that, he does shoot Albertson, who then, as he's dying, we see him take like the lipstick and he puts it on like a crazy person. Then he sticks, I think they were trocars, into him, I guess to embalm himself. Because now he's casting the spell on himself. And then all the townspeople show up as he's pushing dirt over his wife. Sadly, he's very distraught. Again, solid performance by James Ferrantino, the lead. All the townspeople show up, and one by one they place flowers down, and we see they all have scars, showing that everyone in town is undead. And there's this great, like, distorted, echoey audio put over it with the character we see, some line that they said earlier in the film, which I thought was a nice touch. So we see like the doctor, the photographer who now works at the gas station, the guy at the photo developing place. Which even when he goes to pick the film up, we see it pans down. We see his hand is all scarred. Oh, also, one thing I did forget to mention is when that family speeds away earlier, he sees them and he goes to go after him, and then someone runs in front of him and he hits him. So when he gets out and looks, he sees that the forearm and hand is stuck to his grill and it's like writhing. But then he's pushed out of the way, the corpse grabs it and runs off. That's kind of like the first real undead thing that we see. So all these characters, Robert Englund as well, they're all scarred up. We can tell they're dead. The blonde, they all put flowers down. They all say something to him. And then it seems like they're going to attack him, but he's able to escape. Goes back to Dobbs's place, who is reanimated. He's alive again. And this is when he just says, and this is not the part that I saw coming. Again, I thought it was kind of obvious that Jack Albertson would be in on it. It was obvious his wife was going to be in on it. I mean, with the voodoo book and the film that she really wanted developed, that she kept telling him to get developed, I didn't see those as like red herring type things. I thought it was going to be obvious that she was in on it to some capacity. Not as much as she was. But what I didn't see coming was the sort of Jacob's Ladder or Angel Heart ending. Where Dobbs is like, "Dad, there's one more thing that you should know." And he points up to the screen. And in that black and white film, with his wife in bed with someone stabbing him while they have sex with all the townspeople around him, when the body rolls over, it's Dan. So he was dead the whole time. Which, I mean, how did he not know? I guess that's one of the things that kind of falls apart. Like, how was it his body didn't start to rot or scar until then? Because then he puts his hands up to his face and screams, but then he pulls his hands down and looks at him. It's this great like upward shot with the film playing behind him. His fingers are all cracked and scarred, and we just hear Jack Albertson say like, "Come, Dan, let me help you with that," and then just freeze frame. That wonderful Schindler's List-esque piano theme plays. So I guess that's one of the things that doesn't really make sense. Like, how did he not know that he was dead? How did he not pick up on any... how is it he just then started to scar up? Even though Jack Albertson does have control over all of them, I don't think he can control how they decompose or how well reanimated they are. I guess they have to keep going back to him to get touched up. But I guess it's just one of those things you're not supposed to think about. But it's a very good Twilight Zone-esque type twist that works. I mean, that slight touch that doesn't really make sense. That aside, I thought it was a good twist. That part I didn't see coming. And yeah, just a very solid atmospheric film. The fog really helps. The muted look of the colors and just having this overall muted, dull gray tone and look to it really helped. Music certainly helped the mood and atmosphere as well. It has a body count, but it's not a slasher. I mean, it is this weird sort of collective of townspeople, very Stepford Wives. They're all very neutral looking while they do it, which is also creepy. The deaths are plenty vicious. I mean, I'm guessing it was only a video nasty for maybe like the acid kill, but also there was a hitchhiker that got killed with a rock to her face. That we get all these fade ins and out edits of Jack Albertson's hands as he reconstructs her face all the way down to the skull, and he just rebuilds it. Not that it looks super realistic, but that was a great sequence as well. But very interesting. It's a good mystery, even if it is easy to put all the pieces together. But you know, it normally, if a movie makes you think of other movies, it it is because it's not good and you're thinking of better ones. But this one did remind me of, in a good way, White Zombie. Uh, the tone, setting, and atmosphere of John Carpenter's The Fog, John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, also just with the townspeople in the Mouth of Madness. Uh, the performances all around very solid, especially James Ferrantino and Jack Albertson. Stan Winston's effects, even if they look dated, they're still effective. Definitely the biggest takeaway would be the mood and the atmosphere. Definitely the best part about it. And if you're going to pick this up, definitely spring for Blue Underground. Whether it is the 3-disc, 4K, Blu-ray that I'm sure everyone has to get. Because why buy a DVD when there's Blu-ray? Because this still looks awesome. Still a very solid set. It looks great. But, yeah. I would say this is fairly underrated. Not to the extent that some people make it out to be. Because it did just get a 4K Blu-ray release. But, first time I saw it, I think I was disappointed because I knew it was a video nasty. It was one of those movies where it's like, well, why is it on the list? One of those where they did do their homework, but going back and revisiting it now, it's a very solid film, especially for the 1981 where it was mostly slasher films. This was definitely an overseen gem. I really enjoyed Dead Buried. But anyway, not sure what I'm gonna do next, but thank you for watching.